That was my outlet, my fantasy. Good things would happen because they always happened in the movie. So I never doubted that I wasn't going to somehow succeed.
Imagine being told that you could never do what you were born to do, simply because of your gender. In 1967, a woman walked into a room full of powerful Hollywood executives and said, "I want my own show." They laughed at her. They told her it was impossible. They told her no woman had ever done it before. And she said, "Watch me." That woman was Carol Burnett, and what she did next didn't just change her career, it changed television forever. To understand what Carol Burnett actually pulled off, you have to understand the world she was walking into. It's the 1960s. Television is the hottest thing in America. Every family has a set in their living room, and the shows coming out of Hollywood are defining what it means to be an entertainer. But here's the thing. Behind every single one of those shows stood a man. Men created the shows. Men produced the shows. Men decided who got on television and who didn't. And the women on those shows? They played wives. They played secretaries. They played the pretty girl standing next to the funny man. That was the role Hollywood had written for women. And if you dared to step outside of that role, you were finished. Now, a few women had broken through. Lucille Ball is probably the most famous example. She was a trailblazer. She was brilliant, and even she had to fight constantly to maintain control of her own career. But producing your own variety show, that was a completely different mountain to climb. Variety shows were the biggest, most expensive, most complex productions on television. They required enormous budgets, massive crews, weeks of rehearsal, high-profile guests, musical performances, live comedy sketches. Nobody thought a woman could handle all of that. Nobody thought a woman should handle all of that. And then came Carol Burnett, who looked at every single one of those opinions and decided they were absolutely worthless. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933 in San Antonio, Texas. And from the very beginning, life was not easy. Her parents struggled with alcoholism. Her father was largely absent. Her mother was battling her own demons. And young Carol was essentially raised by her grandmother, Mabel, a woman who loved her deeply but had almost nothing to give her materially. They lived in a one-room apartment in Hollywood, not the glamorous part of Hollywood you're imagining, but a run-down building where money was always tight and stability was always uncertain. But here's what Carol had that money couldn't buy: a sense of humor. She discovered early on that she could make people laugh, and in a childhood filled with pain and instability, laughter was her lifeline. She dreamed of being a writer first, then an actress. She enrolled at UCLA on a scholarship, and that's where everything began to click. Her professors saw something in her. Her classmates saw something in her. She had this rare gift of being able to transform completely on stage. She could be vulnerable one moment and hysterically funny the next. After college, she made the bold decision to move to New York City with almost no money and almost no connections. She arrived with $50 in her pocket. $50 in New York City. But Carol Burnett was not the kind of person who let circumstances decide her destiny. She hustled, she auditioned, she performed wherever she could. She got small parts, then bigger parts, and slowly, painfully slowly, New York started to notice her. Her big break came on Broadway with Once Upon a Mattress in 1959, where she played the lead role of Princess Winifred and absolutely stole the show. Suddenly, everyone knew her name, and Hollywood came calling. Carol's first major television exposure came through The Gary Moore Show, a popular CBS variety program where she became a regular performer. And she was electric. Audiences loved her immediately. She was funny in a way that felt completely genuine. She wasn't trying to be the pretty girl. She wasn't playing it safe. She was throwing herself completely into every sketch, making herself look ridiculous, making herself vulnerable, and audiences ate it up. Critics were raving about her. Fan mail was pouring in. By any measure, Carol Burnett was a star. But here's where Hollywood's ugly truth reared its head. Being a star and being in control were two very different things. Carol could perform on someone else's show. Carol could guest star. Carol could be the talent that everyone came to see. But the moment she started talking about having her own show, having her own production company, being the one making the decisions, the doors started closing. She had a contract with CBS at the time, and that contract had a clause, a standard clause they put in contracts back then, that gave CBS the option to call on her services. Carol saw something in that clause that nobody else saw. She realized that the option worked both ways. If CBS could call on her, she could call on CBS. So in 1967, Carol Burnett did something absolutely unprecedented. She exercised that option clause. She walked into CBS and said, "I want a variety show, my own variety show. And according to our contract, you have to give me the opportunity." The room went silent. Then came the pushback. The executives at CBS did not take Carol's request seriously at first, and honestly, why would they? No woman had ever produced and starred in her own network variety show before. They told her variety shows were too expensive. They told her variety shows were too complicated. They told her audiences wouldn't accept a woman leading that kind of program. And here's the part that gets me every time I think about it. They actually suggested she do a sitcom. A sitcom where she would play a wife or a mom, something safe, something small, something that fit into the little box they had decided women belonged in. Carol Burnett said no. Not just no, but absolutely not. She pushed back with a clarity and a confidence that must have been absolutely shocking in that room. She had done her homework. She knew her contract. She knew her value. She knew her audience. And she had something else working in her favor. Her producer, Joe Hamilton, who was also her husband at the time, believed in her completely. Together, they formed their own production company and came to CBS not just as a woman asking for a favor, but as a producer with a plan. That changed everything. Because now, Carol wasn't just a woman with a dream. She was a businesswoman with leverage. CBS eventually agreed, and on September 11, 1967, The Carol Burnett Show premiered on CBS, and television was never the same again. What Carol built with that show was extraordinary by any standard, male or female. Carol Burnett Show ran for 11 seasons. 11 seasons, 279 episodes. It won 25 Emmy Awards. It featured some of the most iconic comedy sketches in television history. Characters like Eunice, the frustrated Southern woman, Mrs. Wiggins, the hilariously incompetent secretary, and of course, the legendary Scarlett O'Hara parody, where Carol came down the stairs wearing a curtain rod still attached to the curtains. That sketch alone became one of the most referenced moments in television history. But beyond the laughs, beyond the awards, beyond the ratings, what Carol was doing behind the scenes was just as revolutionary. She was running the show, not just performing on it, running it. She was involved in every creative decision, every sketch, every guest booking, every costume, every set design. She created an environment on that set that people still talk about today with absolute reference. Her co-stars, Vicki Lawrence, Harvey Korman, Tim Conway, Lyle Waggoner, they will all tell you the same thing. Carol set the tone. Carol made it safe to take risks. Carol made it okay to laugh until you cried during rehearsal. Carol made it feel like a family. And here's something crucial that often gets overlooked. She was doing all of this while being a wife and a mother. Hollywood had spent decades telling women they had to choose career or family, fame or motherhood. Carol Burnett looked at that false choice and refused it. She built a career and a family simultaneously, and she did it on her own terms. Here's a question I want you to think about for a second.
When you watch Tina Fey run 30 Rock, do you think that happens without Carol Burnett? When you watch Shonda Rhimes control an entire night of ABC programming, do you think that happens without Carol Burnett? When you watch Amy Poehler produce and star in her own projects, when you watch Mindy Kaling write, produce, and star in her own shows, when you watch any woman in Hollywood hold real creative power, there is a direct line from that moment back to Carol Burnett sitting across from those CBS executives and refusing to take no for an answer. She didn't just break a glass ceiling, she walked up to a wall that nobody thought could be broken, and she demolished it with charm, talent, preparation, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. And she did it with a smile. That's what made Carol so uniquely powerful. She wasn't angry, she wasn't aggressive, she was warm and funny and completely disarming. But underneath that warmth was an iron will that Hollywood completely underestimated. Tina Fey has cited Carol Burnett as her primary inspiration. Amy Poehler has talked about watching Carol Burnett reruns as a child and realizing for the first time that a woman could be the funniest person in the room. Ellen DeGeneres, Wanda Sykes, Maya Rudolph, Kristen Wiig, ask any of them, Carol's name comes up every single time. In 2019, the Golden Globes created a brand new award in her honor, the Carol Burnett Award, recognizing outstanding contribution to television. The first recipient, Carol Burnett herself, which is exactly as it should be. Carol Burnett is in her 90s now, and she is still working, still performing, still making people laugh. At the end of every episode of her show, she would tug on her left ear. It was a signal to her grandmother, the woman who raised her, who was always watching from home. It was her way of saying, I see you, I love you, I didn't forget where I came from. I think about that gesture a lot when I think about Carol's story, because Carol Burnett never forgot where she came from. A one-room apartment, $50 in New York City, a room full of executives who told her no. She took all of it, every hardship, every rejection, every closed door, and she turned it into something beautiful. She turned it into 11 seasons of pure joy. She turned it into 25 Emmys. She turned it into a legacy that will outlast every single person who ever told her she couldn't do it. So the next time someone tells you you can't, that it's never been done before, that someone like you doesn't get to do something like that, remember Carol Burnett, and remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, watch me. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button because we have so many more incredible stories coming your way. Drop in the comments who you want us to cover next, and share this video with someone who needs to hear Carol's story today. I'll see you in the next one.